Hello, I'm Matt Donnelly, and it is Friday night, so you know we are going to get hyped for this weekend because this is the Fantasy Points Friday Night Hype Show, and we are here to score more. We're going to talk about some game previews for you. We're going to talk about some news and notes. We're going to talk injuries, and we're going to talk about the headlines that have me excited heading into week number 4. So let's dive right into some of those injuries that could affect your fantasy football roster. Starting with Dalvin Cook. Hey, he's questionable with a shoulder injury. He looks like he's going to try and gut it out. I am always concerned when it comes to Dalvin Cook and those shoulder injuries. So for me, I'm proceeding with caution. But if he's playing, you're probably putting him in your lineup. DeAndre Swift, he's probably going to be out this week, which means we get more Jamal Williams. And that is what the world needs right now. Not one thrust, not two, not three, but 4 thrusts, Jamal Williams. Let's go. We also have some big news on the offensive line there. Rashawn Slater there with the Chargers, left tackle, torn bicep. He's out for the rest of the season. That is going to have a trickle-down effect on what Justin Herbert and this LA Chargers offense can do. Then we also have Trent Williams, who's going to miss the next 4 to 6 weeks with that ankle injury. So Jimmy Garoppolo, look out. George Kittle, you may have to block a little bit more than what maybe fantasy managers want. We also have Keenan Allen here on the injury list. He looks like he's going to make his return after missing some time there with that hamstring injury. We got Michael Thomas. He's got a toe. What else is new? Something's always hurt when it comes to Michael Thomas. We got Mac Jones there, ankle. Now, Bill Belichick says he isn't a doctor, so let's call it day-to-day. Shall we? Christian McCaffrey, hey, like Michael Thomas, water is wet, and Christian McCaffrey is on the injury list here, and it's not because he's taking a leak somewhere. It's because he's got that thigh injury. Also, Jameis Winston, he's got a broken back, not just any part of the back, but the spinal part, if you remember Mike Tyson correctly. So dust off the red rifle. You could see him in New Orleans this weekend. Amon-Ra St. Brown, bad ankle, but the dude, he is tough as they come. He will be in that lineup. Joey Bosa, Chargers again. Man, is their franchise more cursed with injuries than the Chargers right now? Joey Bosa, groin injury, IR. He's out for a while. And we got Hunter Renfrow. Continue to monitor that situation there. That concussion that he suffered way back in week number 2 there against the Arizona Cardinals. We'll talk about that a little bit later. We get into the Denver Broncos versus the Las Vegas Raiders game preview. Now let's look at some of these other games. Before we talk about the games that have me excited, we have to touch on every single game this week. We got Minnesota at New Orleans, Cook versus Kamara. London is calling at 7 a.m. Are you waking up for this game? Of course you're waking up. But is Justin Jefferson and this Vikings offense going to wake up? Now that's a different question altogether. We have the Cleveland Browns at the Atlanta Falcons. Is Kyle Pitts back? He had a good week last week. Wait and see on this one. New York Jets, Pittsburgh Steelers. We thought this was going to be Flacco and Trubisky. We got excited, but it looks like it's going to be Zach Wilson and Mitch Trubisky. And I'm not sure how much I like that. We've also got the Washington Commanders headed to the Dallas Cowboys. NFC East rivalry. 9 sacks last week. How many does Micah Parsons and the Dallas Cowboys get on Carson Wentz this week? Chicago versus the New York Football Giants. Look, this is Fields. This is Daniel Jones. This is actually worse than probably Zach Wilson and Mitch Trubisky. Let's call it the way it is. We got the Los Angeles Chargers. We got the Houston Texans. Where is Eckler and this Chargers run game? Is it going to show up this week? Who knows? I mean, if any week's to show up, this is the week to do it. We've also got the Tennessee Titans, the Indianapolis Colts here. Henry versus Taylor. Is this going to be as good as advertised? Because neither one of these backs have really popped so far this season. And Jonathan Taylor, he missed his first practice in who knows how long. I don't even think he missed practice when he was in Wisconsin. We've also got Seattle at Detroit. Over under on Jamal Williams thrust. I'm betting 3. Now, we've also got the Arizona Cardinals at the Carolina Panthers. DJ Nevermore, you need to hire OBJ's dad for your filmography. We've got the Los Angeles Rams, the San Francisco 49ers, NFC West rivalry. But will the play suck once again? Hey, only time will tell, and really only Jimmy Garoppolo will, as long as you can read lips. Now, let's get into the games that I am excited for this week, starting with the Buffalo Bills, the Baltimore Ravens. Hey, we've got an early MVP head-to-head type showdown here. Hey, I'm all in Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts. These are the top 3 MVP candidates right now. We get to see 2 of them go head-to-head this week. How can you not be excited for this contest? You have the highest scoring quarterback of all time through the first 3 weeks of a season in Lamar Jackson against the 10th highest scoring quarterback of all time through that same period of time in Josh Allen. So you dang well know that there's going to be plenty of fantasy points going on. There's plenty of scoring going on. And hey, if there's anything we like to do at fantasy points, it is score more. So this game is right up our alley. Now, Josh Allen versus Lamar Jackson. How are you not excited for this one? This is going to be all about the offense. Two of the top three offenses in terms of touchdowns facing off with two legitimate MVP candidates under center. A Bills defense decimated by injuries. A Ravens defense that is decimated by not having any good players to begin with. That is what fantasy dreams are made of right here. Buffalo, Miami. Hey, Miami limited the Bills last week and Josh Allen to the worst fantasy outing of the season last week, and he still threw for 400 yards and 2 touchdowns and added another 47 yards on the ground. That's a bad week apparently for Josh Allen. Now, how good do you have to be to put up 28.7 fantasy points and this be considered your worst performance to date? Now he gets to face a Ravens team that basically gave a one-legged man named McCorkle 321 yards passing last week. Yeah, I don't like that for the Ravens at all. I'm sorry. Now, no team is remotely this bad when it comes to defending the pass as the Ravens have, allowing nearly 20% more passing yards than any other team. They've allowed guys like Jones and Tagovailoa and Joe Flacco to average over 30.7 fantasy points per game and over 353 passing yards per contest. Now, it helps Josh Allen here when you're thrown to a guy like Stephon Diggs, as long as he's not cramping up. But hey, this game is not in Miami, so I'm not worried about those cramps pulling up here this week. Then again, I'm not really a meteorologist. I don't know what's going on in Baltimore this weekend. Looking at the matchups inside the matchups, which I always love to do, I was listening to my man Wes Huber talking about the advanced matchups in this one, and he dropped this interesting note. Stephon Diggs has the 8th most yards per route run over the last 3 seasons against cover 3. Guess what the Ravens' preferred coverage is? It's cover 3. At least that's what it's supposed to be. I mean, I don't know what it is. It's like a cover 0 that's in a zone somehow. I mean, it's just downright bad. And I don't know what you're going to call that. I don't know what. It doesn't make any sense. Let's put it that way. Let's kind of move on here because I'm going to get all flustered talking about this Ravens secondary and what kind of coverages they may or may not be running. Need more reasoning, though, to start and fire up Stephon Diggs and Gabriel Davis? How about 56.7 fantasy points per game? That is where the Ravens are at these days when it comes to the wide receiver position. Birds of prey, never more. Baltimore's secondary has allowed almost 200 more yards to receivers than the next closest team. More like birds best be praying. Now for Baltimore, hey, not all things are bad. This offense in Baltimore is as good as any in the NFL. Remember when Lamar Jackson was an MVP candidate? Well, guess what? His fantasy production through 3 weeks this season is even better than his MVP season. Jackson is averaging 250 yards per game passing and an additional 81 yards per game on the ground. His 12 touchdowns combined, that's passing and rushing right now, are more than 30 other NFL teams. The only other team to have 12 touchdowns this season is the Detroit Lions. Jackson is the top quarterback so far this season, thanks to his legs. But take away his rushing numbers, he is still a top 5 fantasy quarterback. He's been that good. It is great to see J.K. Dobbins back on the field and seeing 26 snaps there and receiving 7 carries and 2 targets in his first bit of game action since 2019. Buffalo, though, is one of the top run defenses in the league. So Dobbins, to be fantasy relevant, he needs to be more involved in the passing game. And when he gets those opportunities, he needs to be efficient. Speaking of efficiency, Rashad Bateman has not been efficient. He also wasn't really involved in this offense a week ago and has seen less than 20% target share in 2 of the 3 contests so far for the Ravens. While Mark Andrews did Mark Andrews type things, Buffalo will need to put extra attention on Andrews this week as they've always been tough on tight ends. But Mark Andrews is not your typical tight end. In fact, he is probably the best tight end in the game today, bar none. He has also been Lamar Jackson's first read on 40.6% of his throws, which ranks second only to Cooper Kupp. Now watch this injury report closely here as we head into this game. Both Dane Jackson and Jordan Poyer there were limited this week for the Bills, and they are both huge parts of this Bills offense who missed last week's contest with the Miami Dolphins. Now turning our attention to the Denver Broncos and the Las Vegas Raiders. Can Mr. Limited get something cooking in Vegas? I mean, we'll talk about Mr. Limited here a little bit later on in the show as well. Denver currently leads the AFC West with a 2-1 record with wins over the 49ers and the Houston Texans, while the Raiders come into this one as the only team yet to record a victory this season. Last season in Vegas, they found ways to win close games. This season, that has not happened. They have lost all 3 of their contests by a combined 13 points. Now for Denver and Mr. Limited there, Russell Wilson, I mentioned this offense in general has been limited all season long. After some good years in Seattle with Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf, many were expecting this Broncos offense to become more dangerous and a lot less offensive than it has been. Wilson to date has thrown for 743 yards, with 340 of those coming at Seattle while playing a little game of catch-up in the Pacific Northwest. The matchup inside the matchup for this game is how well this Broncos front will handle Max Crosby, who once again has been one of the most effective pass rushers in the league when it comes to quarterback pressures. And Chandler Jones, who hasn't done much all season, he has always had something spicy cooked up for Russell Wilson, who has been sacked 9 times in 3 contests. And we know these two go back to those Arizona Cardinals and Seattle Seahawks rivalries. The Raiders defense is allowing 22.63 fantasy points per game to the quarterback position, which also includes 264 yards and a touchdown to Ryan Tannehill last week, who not only scored by passing the ball, but running the ball as well. Wilson loves himself some Courtland Sutton. Hey, fantasy managers, we love Courtland Sutton as well. Sutton ranks 3rd amongst wide receivers in route share at 97.5%, 16th in target share at 27.7%, 12th in yards per route run at 2.49, and he is 5th in receiving yards at 292, which is even more impressive because of how stale this offense has looked from time to time. Now, Sutton currently has that Jacoby Myers type syndrome going on. He's a top 20 wide receiver in fantasy, and he has yet to score a touchdown. So if he starts scoring touchdowns, Courtland Sutton to the moon. Let's go. Now, after Sutton, the next leading target guy for Wilson is not Jerry Jeudy. In fact, it is Javonte Williams coming out of the backfield, who's been targeted 21 times to Judy's just 16 while hauling in 15 of those passes. Williams also leads the team in rushing yards with 176, averaging 4.8 yards per carry thus far. Quote of the week. Hey, you know me. I love my quote of the weeks. This week, it goes to probably Eli Manning. I didn't really fact check this one, but then again, I don't really fact check a whole lot of things that come out of my mouth. Now, he said, and I quote, maybe, the Broncos here, they should have given the $235 million to the punter instead of the quarterback because of how that game against the San Francisco 49ers went a week ago. For the Las Vegas Raiders, is Derek Carr in this offense finally starting to heat up? Well, if you're looking at it from a fantasy perspective, which we are because, hey, that's what fits my narrative the best, you'd see that Carr has improved upon his previous weeks in each week so far this season, go from QB 16 there in week 1 to QB 7 last week. Carr has thrown for 850 passing yards so far today with a 7.1 yards per attempt, which is helped out by the fact that he has 13 passes of greater than 20 yards, which is tied for the league. What's not helping is the fact that he's got 4 interceptions and only 6 touchdowns, and we know that's not going to get the job done as far as fantasy is concerned. There are 5 teams in the NFL that have thrown at least 70% of the time so far this season through 3 weeks. The Raiders, 73%. That trails only the Joe Flacco-led New York Jets, and Joe Flacco, he's not there anymore. It's going to be Zach Wilson. So, hey, look out, Raiders. You got a chance to pass someone at least. If Carr continues to throw the ball over 70% of the time, I would expect his numbers to look more like they did the first time that these two teams met last season, in which he threw for 341 yards and 2 touchdowns, as opposed to the second meeting there where he threw for 201 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. Davante Adams' involvement in this offense has really limited the ceiling of Darren Waller. Waller sits 19th in targets per route run at his position, despite running the 6th most routes this season. Waller had 2 would-be touchdowns go off his hands, with one of them being intercepted last week when the Raiders were trailing 24-13 against the Titans. Perhaps not all is lost. Opportunity often leads to production, at least we hope. Now, the Raiders and their fans will be hoping to have Hunter Renfrow back after missing last week with that concussion, which he suffered on the last play of the game against Arizona. Mac Hollins has been more than serviceable in his absence there, and on the season, he has caught 14 of 19 targets for 240 yards, which is about 50 yards more than what Davante Adams has produced through 3 weeks. Hollins, 10 targets, 8 receptions, 158 receiving yards, and 1 touchdown. That's tough production to ignore. What else is tough to ignore? Tampa Bay at Kansas City. Brady versus Mahomes. Oh boy, here we go. Both these teams are coming off of ugly losses last week. Kansas City, they dropped one to Indianapolis. Meanwhile, the Buccaneers, they dropped one to the Green Bay Packers on a failed 2-point conversion to tie it up. Now, Tampa Bay, first off, for those in Tampa Bay in the area, stay safe this weekend. Hopefully this Buccaneers squad can bring you some sort of entertainment this weekend and take your mind off things that are going on right now, at least for a couple hours. Now, Brady and this Buccaneers team, they are looking to bounce back this week as Mike Evans has served his suspension. Donovan Smith, he should be back to protect Brady's blind side. And we can also see Chris Godwin return to lineup, so keep an eye on that leading up to kickoff. Brady and this Bucs offense, they have struggled this season, typically stalling out prior to reaching the red zone, which is great if you're in one of those weird leagues that still has kickers, because Ryan Suckup, he's been the man, probably the leading scorer for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'd have to check that as well. Brady's going to be looking across that field to Patrick Mahomes, and you know dang well he knows he needs to capitalize on each and every position, especially when he's facing a Chiefs defense that is allowing just under 21 fantasy points per game to the position. Now, Mike Evans, he is returning this week from his stint on Fight Club. First rule of Fight Club, you don't talk about Fight Club. Second rule of Fight Club, you punch Marshawn Lattimore right in the face whenever an opportunity presents itself. In the third rule, you get peppered by targets once you return from an NFL-enforced timeout, period. You know Brady's going to be looking for Mike Evans over and over and over in this contest there. Now, Donovan Smith's return, it's not just great news for Tom Brady, but Leonard Fournette as well. When the big man is in there, the Bucs, they love to run behind him. They love to get that run game going to the left side. Against the Packers last week, Fournette, he saw 12 carries and produced just 35 yards. Now, the good news, Kansas City, they have allowed 270 yards on the ground and 170 through the air in 3 games, surrendering 25.87 fantasy points per game to the running back position. Turning our attention to the Chiefs, Mahomes, he may be missing Tyreek Hill more than originally thought. We knew there's going to be a little bit of growing pains there and whatnot, especially this cast of misfit toys that he's throwing the ball to. Hill was much more than just a pass catcher, though, in this offense. He made teams change their game plans entirely. Looking at the current lot of pass catchers that Mahomes is working with, they have combined for 430 yards and just 2 touchdowns. Hill himself has 2 touchdowns and 317 receiving yards thus far. Again, this is a little deceiving because I'm not actually accounting for Travis Kelce and his 230 yards received there from the tight end position. There's only 2 quarterbacks this season that have 5 passing touchdowns and fewer than 1 interception this season. And that's Patrick Mahomes and Trevor Lawrence. Now, if you want to add rushing touchdowns in there, you could add Jalen Hurts' name to this list as well. Now, Travis Kelce, he is just 51 yards shy of passing Rob Gronkowski for the 5th most receiving yards for the tight end position in NFL history. Expect more of the same this week and more Kelce to be lined up in a non-traditional role there, as he has been lined up out wide or in the slot 62% of the times this season, which is the 6th most amongst the tight ends. We talked about Mahomes not having any receivers. Well, Kelce's route involvement metric is the highest at 97%. Some are expecting a big Juju Smith-Schuster type game coming here after multiple weeks of a 20% or greater target share, and ADOT there, that average depth of target of over 10, and 8 or more targets in multiple games here. So I'm going to tell you right now, proceed with caution. Juju Smith-Schuster, hey, he's not for me. I'm not about that life, but hey, maybe he works for you. Now, one reason I'm starting to hate PPR leagues is Clyde Edwards-Helaire. No rushing yards, no touchdowns. He puts up 39 yards receiving and somehow at the end of the day ends up with 8.9 fantasy points. Further to all that, Jerick McKinnon is actually out-snapping him right now, 87 to 77. He's getting more work from the 10-yard line and in. I mean, it's ridiculous about how efficient that Clyde Edwards-Helaire is. Somehow, some way, he is a high-end RB2, at least from a fantasy perspective. Now is the time, though. Right now, trade him away. Get every what you can for him and call it a day, because there's no way he continues this. Well, at least I don't think so. Now, moving on to the big one, the main event of the week. How about the Jacksonville Jaguars heading to Philadelphia? Will Jalen Hurts put a hurting on the Duval duo this week? Sometimes 3-0 don't feel like it should, but Jay Hurts, he is so good. Now, can the Jacksonville Jaguars provide their own Philly special this week as Doug Peterson makes his return to Philadelphia? For Jacksonville, Trevor Lawrence, he completed 28 of 39 passes for 269 yards. That's a 6.7 yards per attempt average there against the Chargers last week. It was the 3rd week in a row in which Lawrence increased his fantasy production. But this Eagles difference, they will test exactly how good Trevor Lawrence truly is. Philadelphia is allowing roughly 4.5 yards per play and limiting opposing quarterbacks to about a 57.9% completion percentage while sacking the quarterback 12 times already this season, which trails only the Dallas Cowboys. The Eagles have collected 4 interceptions as well this season, go along with all those sacks, okay? The back end and the front end of this defense, they are in sync with one another, and they are allowing 11.59 fantasy points per game to the quarterback position, the 7th fewest in the NFL, and they've been especially tough these last 2 games. The Jaguars spent a lot of money on the receivers in this offseason, and we all laughed. Hey, admit it, you laughed at the money that was spent on Christian Kirk, on Zay Jones, on Evan Ingram for that matter. Well, it's worked out pretty good, don't you think? And quite frankly, I don't think Christian Kirk or Zay Jones care because they secured the bag and they are performing right now. They've also secured status as one of the top duos right now through the first 3 weeks of the season. Come again? Christian Kirk is 8th in receiving yards with 267, while Jones is 32nd with 173, as both have already hauled in at least 18 receptions. Kirk has posted a target share of over 20% in all 3 games this season, while Jones has 9 or more targets in 2 of 3 contests. Doug Peterson has done an excellent job of moving Christian Kirk around the formations all season long, as only 41% of Christian Kirk's targets have come against cornerbacks in coverage, which is the second lowest rate among 35 wide receivers with 20 or more targets this season. Kirk on linebackers, Kirk on safeties, that is essentially a passing cheat code. I remember a few weeks back, I was professing my dying bromance for Christian Kirk to Mike Dempsey, and he said, don't forget to show Zay Jones some love. Trevor Lawrence, he certainly has. Jones has been on the field 75% of the snaps this season and ran a route on 84% of Lawrence's 116 dropbacks, receiving a 21.6% target share. James Robinson is everything fantasy managers wanted Cam Akers to be post Achilles. His 230 rushing yards ranks him 9th at the running back position so far through 3 weeks, and his 4 runs of greater than 20 yards is tied with Nick Chubb for the most in the league. It's not just Robinson either. Travis Etienne, he has looked equally good. 1.73 yards per route run, which is 9th amongst running backs, while having the 7th highest forced missed tackles rate. Now, for the Philadelphia Eagles, if you are looking for Jalen Hurts to slow down, you may be waiting a while yet. His opponents from this week forward, we're up till week number 11. You got Jacksonville, obviously, Arizona, Dallas, Pittsburgh, Houston, Washington, and Indianapolis. And per Scott Barrett, they're over fantasy points. When you adjust for Jalen Hurts numbers for blowouts, excluding the second half of games this season, Jalen Hurts is averaging 29.8 passing fantasy points per 4 quarters. And even further to that, he's averaging 20.6 rushing fantasy points per 4 quarters. You add that all up, bippity boppity boo, and that's 50.4 total fantasy points per 4 quarters. Players with 900 plus passing yards and 150 plus rushing yards through the team's first 3 games of a season. Jalen Hurts 2022, that is it. That is the list. That has been how good Jalen Hurts has been this season. So when I'm not joking when I'm saying that Jalen Hurts is a legitimate MVP candidate. You want to talk about Josh Allen, that's great. You want to talk about Lamar Jackson, that's great. Both deserving candidates. But Jalen Hurts' name has to be up there, if not the leader in the clubhouse right now. Remember how good Michael Vick was for this Eagles team back in 2013 when he put up 1,019 yards combined passing and rushing there in those first 3 games? Well, Jalen Hurts, he has 1,083 in the first 3 weeks. It's all about the Batmans in Philadelphia. Well, at least the swole one and the skinny one. Devonta Smith led the duo once again in week number 3 with 169 yards and a touchdown. That's like 21 yards per reception against the Commanders. A.J. Brown, he would finish with 5 receptions to go along with a score and 85 yards. So, hey, he still got the job done himself. A.J. Brown on the season ranks 12th in receptions with 20, 4th in yards with 309, while Devonta Smith has 15 receptions, which is good for 33rd, 249 yards, which is 11th. And you know what? These numbers, they're just going to continue to go up each and every week. It does appear that Jalen Hurts, he knows how to distribute that ball pretty well. Now, remember after week number 1, Hurts basically went over to Devonta Smith and said, hey, I got you. Well, Smith has more receiving yards in the last 2 weeks than A.J. Brown has. When the Eagles control things the way they can, they're a pretty dang good team, I'll put it that way. What are the games? What are the matchups? What are the headlines that you are looking forward to here in week number 4? Drop them in the comments below because we want to hear from you. And if you like free stuff like I do, as much as I do each and every week, we've got some shows on here that you need to be paying attention to. Every Monday, we have the Monday grades, courtesy of Wes Huber, 9 a.m. Eastern, right here on the Fantasy Points YouTube channel. Tuesdays, plugged in DFS review with Scott Barrett and Jordan Tolan. That's JM2 Win. That comes at you at 2 p.m. Eastern. Wednesday, we got the midweek mailbag there with Nick Script and the daily lineup by Joe Dolan. Grab yourself a cup of Joe with Joe Dolan. Tuesdays through Fridays, 9 a.m. Eastern. And I'm going to leave you with this. Do you want to split a cucumber sandwich with extra mayo? This is my signature sandwich. I call it the Matwich. Be careful, though. It's spicy. I added extra ground pepper here to this one. You ever done anything dangerous? Oh, this sandwich right here, this is dangerous. Probably because the mayo has already expired. But I won't tell anyone if you don't tell anyone. But there was this one time. Oh, you know what? That's too dangerous. You know what else is dangerous? Not using promo code HYPE22 to get 10% off over at fantasypoints.com. Now, that is dangerous. We don't want that. Subscribe today and score more. someone let Russ cook again? Like, come on.